My friend Dave from Calmwood Creations sent me a box of odd organic shaped pieces of wood, and he wanted me to talk about how I go about figuring out how to mount the piece on the lathe. So if you don't like talking, fast forward about 5 minutes probably, whatever it takes, I don't know, to the turning part. I am going to be talking about what I think of this piece, how I go about deciding how to turn it, if it's fit for turning at all, and things like that. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, as we like to say here at Shady Acres Wood Shop. Howdy, let's get to it. Now first of all, what we have here is an apple root. Feels really dry. I didn't even check it to see how dry it is, but I think it's quite dry. Feels dry. It doesn't weigh an awful lot. That's what we're dealing with. The first thing I do is I pull on the piece. I check it to see if it's stable, if it's going to stay in one piece. Apply a lot of pressure. Actually, I usually set it down on the workbench and lean on it. Try and separate it, see if it's going to separate at all. See if there's any movement whatsoever that I need to be concerned with. Also, usually you're going to have a cut, a flat cut, usually, dealing with any piece of wood. I mean, somebody had to make a chainsaw cut somewhere, or a bandsaw cut or something. Usually you're going to have a flat side to start with. May not be where you want to start. Maybe you want to turn it like this, on its side or something. And I've looked that over to see if that is a possibility, and I don't really see that it is. I could turn it this way, if that is the top, but then I'd end up turning all that wonderfulness away, and that's just goofy. I wouldn't do that. I am going to do some trimming on it, however, with the bandsaw. We'll talk about that in a minute. So let me set this down here and show you how I find center, how I decide which way to turn it, that sort of thing. My default preferred method of mounting a piece is a woodworm screw. I much prefer a woodworm screw simply because it frees up the bottom side. When I want to make a tenon or a recess or whatever, it just frees it up for sanding, finishing, but it just isn't always possible. I don't see where it's possible in this case, except that my friend Tuffy made me a special tool that will get in there, a special woodworm screw. It will get in there and hold it. But not everybody has one of those, so I'm not going to use it. So what do we got? Well, we got an oval shaped bottom. It's longer this way than it is this way. So what's the middle of that? How do you find the middle of that? And then how do you transfer that to the top side for mounting? Well, first thing you do is you measure that bottom. In the length, it's about 7 inches. Now, none of this is perfection. I mean, you don't need to say, oh, it's 7 1/16 or 7 you don't need to do that. On a piece like this, you just don't need to be that precise. It's about 7 inches. And this way, it's about 5 inches. Now, I could measure clear out to here, but I'm not going to. That's 5 3/4, but this is where the mass is. It's about 5 inches. So 5 by 7. So 7 inches, half of that's 3 1/2. We'll just make a mark here at about 3 1/2. And this way was 5 inches, half of that's 2 1/2, so we'll make a mark at about 2 1/2. And there's the center. Now that might not be the perfect center again, but it's close enough. So how do I transfer that to the top? Where did I measure from to get that 7? I didn't measure from the longest point, I measured right next to it, right over here. So I need to know that when I flip this over. So I flip it over here, I take a square, and I come in about here. So now I can measure from here over 3 1/2 inches. I'm looking for a spot on here that I can simply remember, and it turns out that this little spot right here is about 3 1/2 inches. So I'm just going to remember that. Now width-wise, what was that? That was 5 inches. Okay, so I'll put my square over here. I'll measure over 2 1/2. I'll see if that little spot, that 3 1/2 inch spot, comes out at 2 1/2. And it's about 2 3/4. What if I measure from this side? Well, I can't really, because this hangs way over the width of the bottom. This little branch section hangs out way over. So I have to come, well, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. I can't do it from that side, but that's okay. You only need one side. We already know it's 2 1/2. So if that's 2 1/2 is what we want, and I've got 2 3/4, I know that I just need to move it over that way, 1/8 of an inch. And I'll just remember that that is the center, except need to go that way, 1/8 of an inch. We'll have it. Okay, so now what? What do I need to trim off of here to make this turnable, get stuff out of my way, what doesn't look good, what does look good, what don't we want to cut away. Well, for me, this looks good, this piece. This little broken off branch sticking up here. That looks kind of good to me. Maybe not to you. So I want to keep that. These pieces, these don't look so good. Now that doesn't mean I want to cut them gone, but I want to cut them down at least in half, probably cut 3/4 off of there. This part right here sticks up way beyond this. So I'm going to cut some of that off. I'm going to cut it down to about even with this. I'm also going to make what I call cleaning cuts. I'm going to clean this cut up. I'm not going to take off much, maybe 1/8 of an inch, just so that it's clean, fresh. I don't always do that, but in this case I want to, I guess because it's kind of prominent. Other than that, the piece looks pretty good. Now, how do I know all this stuff? Well, it just comes from practice. If this was your first time turning something like this, just like I had a first time, I would be completely confused. What are you going to do? What's going to happen if I turn this away or that away? I don't know, except that now I do through experience. I know what's going to happen once I make these cuts and how I can get in here and turn it. That's how I know I need to get rid of this stuff. I've turned pieces without getting rid of things like that and find out that, oh my, this is not any fun whatsoever. But I always want to try and preserve as much as I can. I'm not trying to make this easy, I'm trying to make it possible. That's all, just possible. I don't expect this to be an easy turning. So let's step over to the bandsaw and make a few trims. Now you don't want to just start taking off as much as you can. You want to kind of nibble at it, take off as little as you can until you get to where you need to be, because you just can't put it back on there. And this isn't necessarily safe what I'm doing, because there's nothing holding this piece. It's going to want to go like that as soon as it touches the saw blade, so I'm going to be holding back on it so that it won't do that. Not a good idea. It works for me, it may not work for you. I'm going to look at it. Are they about even? They don't have to be exactly even. We probably don't even want them exactly even. We just want it to be closer, not necessarily right on the money. Now I'm going to cut off these little twigs over here. Same situation, not necessarily safe. Make a cleaning cut. Just take off a little sliver, clean it up. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Well, change of plans. I tried to do this while I was over at the bandsaw, and I guess I just didn't hit the right spot. I really want to clean up this bottom. So this will solve a lot of problems for me. So what I'm going to do is take it back to the bandsaw, which I've already cleaned up. I've already put the cover back on it. I've already put the camera back. I'm not going to take you with me, but what I'm going to do is bring this up against the fence on this side, and I'm just going to run a real thin strip off of here, clean that bottom right up, and then I can use my piece of plywood with some double-faced tape or hot glue or something and just mount it on there, and I don't even have to worry about a woodworm screw or turning between centers or anything else. Since I'm not going to be turning the outside of this, I'll just stick it up there like that and turn the bowl on the inside. What do you think? But sorry, you're not going with me. I'll be right back. I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but I'll try. I'll explain what I'm doing. So I've got some double-faced tape on this block of plywood. I'm going to put this with the long side this way, same as the plywood. I'm just testing it right now. This is my landing spot. This is the spot that I picked out earlier to be the center. So I'm just going to slide this. I'm trying not to stick those back down because they're hard to peel up, but I guess I'm probably going to end up doing it anyway. I'm just trying this to see if I'm going to be able to apply pressure on my landing spot. Now I'm checking for distance on each side, and that's good. So I'm going to lock down my tailstock, and that's where we want to be. You only get one shot at this. And I won't need hot glue, I don't think. Okay. I think that's, yep, that's gonna work. Perfect. So now I'll just apply pressure. I could put a couple clamps on here as well because I'm only applying pressure in the center, but I can see that it is very tight all the way around. I'll let that set up for about 15 minutes and we'll get to turning. What do you know? We're gonna be turning at 700 RPM, 5/8 inch bowl gouge, mask and face shield on. Let's see where we are here. Well, we can come out further, almost ½ inch. Yeah, that's about the biggest we can go. In fact, we have to start coming back in very soon because there's not much material right here. Something slamming about in there. You can see some pretty big fissures here. So I think that's what's happening. It's kind of tearing apart a little bit. I don't think it's going to come apart, but it's not liking what we're doing to it. But the tape looks good, still holding. I don't see anything pulling away anywhere. It's sure making some strange sounds though. I really wish I could come out further, but I don't think it's a good idea. Crazy looking, huh? I know. I'm gonna go sharpen up at the root, you know, so there's dirt and crud in there, dulling my chisel quickly. Well, I find that I need to come out here further. I'm just barely kissing this. Uh-oh. Well, shoot. So what do? Do I break it off or do I glue it in place? It's serving as one side of this bowl, but that means I can't really go out any further. Well, I am going to glue that on. It might end up coming off anyway. I might cut it away. I don't know, but at least we'll have an option. So I'm going to put some CA in there, put a clamp on it, and I'll be back. Well, I glued that down, and it's hard as a rock now. It doesn't seem to be moving at all. This part right here is bothering me. It's just so much thicker than this side is, but I can't take this down anymore because it's so thin right here. So I'm going to probably, after I'm done turning, do something to this that I've never done on this channel before, that I've never done in my life before. A little bit different. I'm a purist when it comes to wood turning. I think, you know, it's me and the gouge and the wood, and that's it. No other tools necessary, but I think I'm going to introduce another tool and see if I can't open this side up a little bit. I hope that doesn't do anything to the symmetry of the piece. Symmetry. Maybe that's not the right word for this piece, but you get what I mean. I'm not going to try and make it this thin. Just thinner than it is, that's all. Anyway, so we'll get back to turning here. Still turning at 700, working my way towards the bottom. I think I'm gonna try and thin this out a little bit now that it seems to be quite stable, but not much. Because I kind of need it there for the side of the bowl. Or not, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Let me get my mask and face shield back on and we'll get at it. I don't know if I dare try a scraper on there. Doesn't seem like a good idea. Okay, I'm gonna try my little extra idea here. I hardly ever use an angle grinder. I put a flap sanding wheel on here, but I hardly ever use these things, which is weird because when I went looking for this one, I found two more. I'm just gonna kind of paw at this like this. I'm just trying to take away this corner, open this side up a little bit. I'm not trying to make this side as thin as this side. Just taper it out a little bit. I hope that doesn't ruin it. I don't know. I don't know what to expect from this, if it's going to be grabby or what. One thing I do see is that piece of bark is loose, and I guess I'd just as soon not lose it, so I'm going to glue that down and we'll get back at it. This angle might work better, I don't know. Although, I suppose I'm going to block what I'm doing, huh? Yeah, and I think my 2-inch sanding disc can clean that up okay. Now I see this has a sharp edge. I just want to kind of round that over a little bit. Yeah, that's all I wanted to do. I don't think that'll change the symmetry of the piece. I think it's time for sanding. It's the next day, and I had to have a little procedure this morning. I'm feeling a little woozy, so I'm not going to do anything stupid. I'm not going to try and spin this up and sand it. I'm just going to sand in place like this. I'll just sand it and then turn it and sand it and turn it. I'm also going to be using my Sandoflex extensively to do everything I can possibly reach on the outside, cleaning up the bark and whatnot. And I'm also going to be using this brass bristle brush to get in here, places where the Sandoflex can't reach. Wherever that might be. It can reach most of it. Sandoflex is 120 grit. And then I'll switch to 180 grit, and that's as fine as I'll go on the bark part, on the unturned parts. And my 2-inch disc, I'm going to start at 80 grit. I'm going to sand it, like I said, in place like this, through the grits up through 400, with it not spinning, because I think that might just be stupid. And I'll show you what all that looks like as soon as I get my mask on. So like that. We haven't been talking about this part that sticks out here, and you're probably not at the right angle to see it, but it's actually pretty dang cool. I thought this would be the front, but then when I turn it this way and I see this, I think this might be the front, but who knows? I won't know until it's setting up right. And then the 2-inch disc. Yeah, that won't be too bad. So that's what that looks like, and I'll bring you back and we'll put some sanding sealer on there, I think. See you in a bit. Well, sanding was a pain. Just a pain. I've sanded pieces like this before, turned pieces like this before, and I suppose I've had some hard times, but this seems like maybe the hardest ever. It's just so many ins and outs, so many protrusions, but it's smooth. I'm not going to say silky because it's not silky, but it's smooth. Feels good. You can run your hands over any part of it and you won't get hurt. Took a long time to get there, I can tell you. This is sanding sealer I'm applying, shellac based sanding sealer. It's going to take a lot of brush work on the bark and unturned areas and in these little voids and whatnot. And I'll put on 2 coats of this and then 2 coats of shellac over the whole thing. I always like to get a base coat on before I start brushing. It helps keep brush marks from showing up. But it's really important to go back over on the turned parts anyway. Any brushing that you might have done, go back over it with fresh shellac on the rag to erase any of those brush marks. And I'm not going to show you all of this. It's going to take a while to brush all of this bark and unturned areas. And I don't show the application of the shellac because it's exactly like this. No difference at all. None. Zero. Brush and a rag applied exactly the same way. Oh boy, this is going to look nice. Okay, that gives you a good idea of what it's going to look like. I'll be working on this for a while. Like I said, 2 coats of this, 2 coats of shellac. I'll bring you back and we'll take a look at it. Well, I guess I gotta still get it off the tape, don't I? That won't be too difficult. You'll see. See you in a bit. So I have my little heater here running, pointed at the bowl. And I've just had the lathe spinning slowly for 5 minutes. I'll give it another 5 minutes or so. And then we'll start prying that off the tape. The heat just softens that glue on the tape and it comes right off. I'll show you just a little bit. Let's see if that's ready to come off yet. I'm going to take my putty knife and pry. Oh yeah, pry on it a little bit. It does leave behind a little residue, so I use goof off. I suppose you could use something like lacquer thinner or something, but I have a big old can of goof off because I make a lot of goofs. So I'll just wipe that down, get some finish on there, and I'll be right back. Be sure you stick around at the end of the video so you can see the before and after shots of this piece. If you'd share the video, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Well, here it is, one Loch Ness Monster bowl in the books. See, it kind of looks like the Loch Ness Monster. See? Yeah. I thought this would be the front. But I kind of like that. It's just an interesting piece. This kind of epitomizes what I like to do, or what I'm trying to do with a lot of my pieces. Not every single one, but a lot of them. I want it to look like it did when I started, but just polished up a bit and resembles something in this world. In this case, a bowl. Resembles a bowl. It doesn't have to be a bowl. You don't have to call it a bowl if you don't want to. It could just be an artwork, a sculpture, whatever you think. But it's just interesting. I think one of my favorite parts is this, where the bark is missing and that darker colored wood under the bark. Looks pretty cool to me. Kind of looks like a forest that way. Just a lot to see, a lot to explore. I just put wax on the bottom. I signed it and put wax on the bottom. That's all I did. Even that looks pretty nice, I think. Where the wood has been strained over the years. The roots pulling on it one way and the trunk pulling on it the other way, and kind of separated the grain of the wood. What do you think? Let me know what you think. Thank you, Dave from Calmwood Creations, for sending this along for all to enjoy. If you like this video, thumbs up please. I'd sure appreciate it. If you're a subscriber, thank you very kindly. I truly appreciate that. If you're not a subscriber, you might consider becoming one. I put out regular videos, about one a week, and I'd like to keep in touch. An easy way to subscribe is just click my picture you see there near the end of the video. Your comments are always welcome, and I love reading them. So for now, this is Phil, Shady Acres Woodshop, signing off.